All right, so we talked about data partition previously also. So here is the place where we are discussing actually why we are doing it. Okay, the reason we are doing it is to make sure that that the model that we select will predict future better than just be a good model for the current data. So you take the entire data set and you partition the data set into, you know, 2 or 3. Okay. So now most of the cases that we will be discussing, we will only partition the data into 2 sets, training and validation partition, right? But there are some methods that use both the training and the validation in the process of developing the model. So in that case, the validation data set is no longer a virgin data set. It is being used for developing the model. So we need a third set to evaluate the accuracy of the model. In such cases, we will partition the data set into 3 partitions. Okay. Normally 2, but there are occasions when we will have to do 3. Okay. So now we're going to look at how we're going to do that. Okay. And then of course after that we get the new data. So new data is not part of the partition, so it's coming from in the future. So we have a data set, we want to be able to partition that into 2 sets or 3 sets. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. 2 partitions will be train and validate, 3 would be train, validate and test. And suppose here we want to start, we want to do this at random. And okay, so we can do this using the base R code. You don't need any libraries for this. But then there are times when you may want to partition the data with some more criteria. Okay, not simply random, but some criteria included in the selection process. In that case, okay, there are packages available that will do that. Okay, and we will look at examples of that later. But right now we're going to look at only the base R code. So of course we will start with the set seed, so we all get the same answer. Okay, and there are several ways in which this can be done. So I'm going to show you all of them. Really, okay. So we set that seed. Okay, say 1. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we have names, row names for the data set. Okay. So this code is going to give you all the row names. Okay. And the default row name is 1 through the number of rows in the data set. Okay. And these are not numerical values. They are numbers, but they are coded as character in the data set. So those are the row names. And what we want to do is we want to take a sample from those row names. Okay. Then we have to specify how many you want. Okay. So you want 60% of the rows. All right. So we say n row, okay, housing dot df. Okay. So that's the total number of rows. Okay. So 5,802. That's what that is. Okay. And we want 60% of that. So do 0.6. Okay. So here is what we want to sample from, and this tells us how many we want. Okay. And of course, we want to capture that, say, we call that train rows. Okay. Now, if we subset housing data with those train rows, okay, all columns, okay. So you are now subsetting the rows that we have selected. So that's going to give us the train data set or train partition. So we'll call it train DF. Okay. Sample is going to do a random sample from these names, that many row names. Okay. And then we use those row names, okay, use that to subset and save it in train data set, train partition. Now the remaining, the balance, is going to be the valid, so we call it valid rows. Okay. Now we want to take the difference, right? These are the original row names, and these are the ones that we have already selected for train. The difference is going to be the valid, right? And there is a function called set diff. Okay. So set diff row names housing dot df. So that's the full list, and then okay, what needs to be taken out, you give it there. Okay. So this is the full list, and you take that out. Okay, find the difference. So this is, it is, you can think of it like x minus y. Okay. So those train rows will be taken out, and the balance will be valid rows, and we can say valid df. Again, you do subsetting housing dot df, right? Valid rows and all columns. Okay. So this is going to set up our.
So when do we know the difference to use brackets? I don't understand the difference when we use brackets and when we don't.
You mean that
Yeah.
and that?
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you have a function, something, some calculation that you're doing, so that's going to be parentheses like that. Okay. Now, square brackets are used for accessing something in a data set. So you have a data frame, and you want the first row of the data frame or the first row, third column. So that's when you will use the square bracket. Square brackets are used with data, and parentheses are used when you have a function that does some sort of calculation. Okay, and run that. And we have the partitions.